Years go by, you'll see it inside the tree. You'll see stains, you'll see decayed spots, but they're always circled. It's always enclosed. So in essence, it says, you're damaged, I'm cutting you off, and it'll just wrap around it. So in some cases, like when you're taking cuttings for like flower arranging, things like that, to keep water from being lost, you can do that. It'll seal the wound in the end. But for wounds on a tree, that's not necessary. In our day and age, a lot of the trees we buy are grafted, meaning that this tree is a different type of tree than the understock. Let's say, for instance, this guy has a really nice variegated leaf. It's got white, pink, and green all on one leaf. And I pay $300 for this tree because they're really expensive trees. This understock down here in the bottom is nothing more than just Japanese maple. Plain old green leaves, big leaves, nothing special about it whatsoever. If you see shoots coming out of underneath there and they're all green, then you want to take those off because they will outgrow and outcompete this top.
Like a rose.
Like a rose bush, you have understock from your roses that come out. And they're different roses. They're not the same rose, right? And you got to keep cutting them out. Another good example is weeping cherries. Really nice cascading habit, and all of a sudden you'll see one branch just doing this. That's from the understock. That's not the cherry tree you want, but it will take over and kill the weeping cherry that you have. So you got to take them out too. Crab apples is another one. You've got to watch those shoots on the bottom.
I bet.
One of the questions I get asked the most is, when do you prune? The only time that I think you really should avoid pruning is fall. When the plants are going into dormancy, that's when I keep the pruners away from the trees. They've discovered that when trees go into their fall coloration, when they start to shut down for the winter, the nitrogen that's in those leaves is moved back into the plant. So it doesn't just shed the nitrogen, it actually moves it back into and stores it within the plants and the roots. If we prune heavily in the fall, we've just taken all that nitrogen away from that tree. It depends a lot on what you want to do as to when you want to prune. If you want to invigorate a plant, if you want to make it new, like your roses, or if you want to, forsythia, for instance, it's old, it's got heavy wood. If you want to make it more vigorous, now's the time to prune. Because now the plants are sitting there just waiting for the temperatures and the light to be just right, and they're going to burst into growth. If you cut the branch right now, the plant has not utilized the energy to flower, to produce leaves, to produce fruit, to produce elongated growth. It's saved all that energy, and it puts it into new growth from the base. So for instance, lilacs. You can do that to a lilac.
Are shoots the same as sucklings?
Are shoots the same as suckers? They are, except for where they're produced. Suckers are produced from the base of the tree or from the roots. The branches are produced directly off of the trunk. Suckers are extremely vigorous. They sap a lot of the energy from the plant. If you can wait, and it's awful hard to do so because you're out there pruning and you see all these suckers around the base of your crab apple or something, or cherry tree, and you just got to prune them off. If you can wait to prune suckers until late May, early June, let the suckers grow. Let them use their energy to grow and produce leaves, and then cut them off. Now their energy level is low, and they won't regrow as fast as they will if you prune them now. If you prune them now, you're invigorating. You're making them grow even more. Spring pruning is invigorating, it's rejuvenating. Summer pruning is dwarfing. How many of you have a forsythia that just keeps growing way out of bounds? Don't prune in the spring, prune in the summer. Because by letting it get all of its energy growth out, let it do its thing, then prune, and it will not grow anywhere near as fast back as it did before. Now I know that people say, oh, but you've got to prune after flower. Prune right after flower. Well, I'll forego the flowers for a year if I can get the plant back into condition where I'm satisfied with it. I'm patient. Now they say that because some plants bloom on old wood, some plants bloom on new wood. Forsythia blooms on old wood, meaning the flowers are produced last year, went through all the winter, and now they're blooming. If a plant blooms before June 15th, it's probably old wood. If it blooms after June 15th, it's on new wood, which means it's produced this year and flowers this year. That's how you can tell the difference, or look in the books.
So an azalea probably blooms before June 15th.
Most azaleas do. There are some summer blooming azaleas that bloom on new wood.
So when would you want to prune it?
Well, if you want to, if everything's okay, and you want to prune just for the flowers, then just after the flowers you go ahead and prune. It'll produce new growth and set buds that same year. One of the shrubs that I like the best is the late panicle hydrangea. Most hydrangeas are the ones that the snowball types with the pink and blue flowers. They bloom on old wood. That means our winners usually take the buds and kill them. The panicle hydrangea blooms on new wood. We can cut our plants back to like 6 inches tall. It'll grow 3 to 4 feet and flower in the same year. That's the kind of plants I like in the landscape. I don't like finicky plants.
No, I don't either.
Pardon?
When do you trim back the hydrangea?
When do you trim which hydrangea? The new wood? You can do that right now. Because the buds are going to form this summer and flower in the late summer.
So you shouldn't do that in the fall.
The pruning?
Yeah.
Nah. And the reason I don't like doing it in the fall or the early winter is because that wound is there all winter long. If I wait until now, I've only got a couple of weeks before that plant is actually growing and it's starting to cover and complete its wounds. If it sits there all winter long, it has more chance, I think, for it to dry out, to crack, produce more wounds. As a homeowner, I can do that. Oh, that went quick.
Somebody wanted to know about spirea.
Spirea? Is it the summer blooming type?
It's the princess.
Japonica, the little princess. That one's a summer blooming type of spirea, so you can prune it down now to the ground, just a couple inches tall. It'll regrow and flower this year. That's the nice thing about those spireas. You can cut it right down to the ground. Leave a couple of inches, because buds will form on stems, but buds won't form on roots. So if you've got a plant that's going into the ground, there's a point where the roots change into the stem. If you get into that point, it doesn't produce as much as stem growth. It actually can die back a little bit. If you leave a little bit of the stems, that'll produce the new buds. Well, there's some that produce flowers early. Like there's some that will bloom in late March, early April. You'd want to wait until after they were done flowering to prune those.
Can we talk about apple trees?
What about
When to
apple
prune
trees?
those? I was
Well,
always told like to.
I wouldn't prune until